You only get one chance to make a positive first impression. And for new Detroit Lions head coach Dan Campbell and general manager Brad Holmes, if there was any confusion or misunderstanding of the direction they wanted to take the franchise as they begin this massive rebuilding effort in the Motor City, they made it clear of their intentions on draft night. Do whatever you can to win the line of scrimmage. With now Penei Sewell in the fold, the franchise is hopeful he'll be the anchor of one of the most talented and young offensive lines in all of football. So the question now becomes, after their first inaugural draft, is the franchise on the right track and headed in the right direction? Did Holmes and Campbell get foundational pieces to build around in the talent evaluation Super Bowl of the spring? I posed those questions to friend of the program, 97.1 The Ticket, update anchor and producer Jake Riepma, who returns to the program to give his State of the Union when it comes to the state of the Lions following the draft. I'm Kevin McShann. Let's have this conversation. Absolutely, but I want to welcome you to the show, and today we're going to recap what the Lions have done this offseason. Always great to see you, and thanks for taking a few minutes, Jake.
Oh, Kevin, absolute pleasure. So glad to be back with you. I love coming on. I love chopping it up with you and whatever we're talking about. Usually it's the Lions, so that can sometimes be a depressing topic, if you will. But, draft season's fun, right? It gives us some hope, some optimism, and some things to be excited about. But thanks again for having me on. I really do appreciate it.
Absolutely. The draft is the Lions' version of Christmas because they haven't lost yet. So it's all sunshine and rainbows there, Jake.
Yeah, something like that, right? It's also, I've said this time and time again, draft season is so noisy because you guys like you and I, we can come with our opinions and confirm the picks or say, oh, we should have gone in this direction. We should have done that. I love this. I love what we're doing here, but there's no proof, there's no data to prove anything until the fall. So it's kind of fun to just speculate and spew out our opinions on what has transpired and what we think were good moves and what we think could have been improved.
Absolutely. So let's dive right into it, Jake. So my first question today is generally, I'm wondering if you can assess the state of the franchise after the draft and the offseason we've seen there, but
no doubt about it. Look, Brad Holmes and company, their first, like you said, Christmas or their first big showtime, if you will, with the NFL draft. And I think they made a clear statement. Listen, this team is going to be built from within the trenches. I mean, it was the first time since 1992 the Lions spent two of their first three draft picks picking up interior defensive linemen. And then who was the third pick? Obviously, Penei Sewell. Well, he was the first pick, but of the three in the first three picks, he was the offensive lineman. Then you got the two defensive linemen. So they're sending a clear message. Chris Spielman also with his fingerprints on this organization now moving forward that this team is going to be nitty gritty, built from within. And that has a lot of Lions fans exciting. And it kind of fits the mold that Dan Campbell used in his introductory press conference. How many times do we talk about that? Biting kneecaps off. It seems like these are some guys that will bite some kneecaps. But then you look at some of the later rounds. You address some position needs in round 4. You get a wide receiver and a linebacker. So, it's not just a complete rebuild. You're still putting players in places that you have position needs with the wide receiver and the linebacker draft picks. So overall, I think the assessment of the franchise, because that was your original question, is we're not there yet in the coming season in 2021. It's certainly going to take some time, but you start to put together some franchise altering pieces that are going to be there, and the pieces that you're going to be building around. So, the immediate future obviously is a little bit bleak, but the long-term approach, I think, is what Brad Holmes and company were using on this draft here in 2021.
Absolutely. Now, Jake, I hate the draft grades question right after the draft. So I'll ask it this way: in order for this draft class to be successful, what do you think has to happen in order to consider this draft class a success?
Well, Kevin, first off, thank you for not making me put a letter grade to it, because what does it matter if I say A+++ or D-, right? That's just a letter grade. So I'm so glad you phrased it that way. So here's what I'll say. I think given the state of the franchise, we can all agree the bottom's about to fall out or is falling out, and you're on that rebuild or retool, reload, whatever you want to call it. Matt Patricia and Bob Quinn ran this franchise into the ground, so there's a lot to try to recover from that. And so for this first draft for Brad Holmes to be a success, and I keep saying Brad Holmes, but everybody in the front office that's involved, for it to be a success, I think you got to have at least three franchise staples moving forward, 3 cornerstone pieces that are going to be with the team for years and years to come. Now, of course, we can probably pencil in Penei Sewell. Everybody loves that pick. I, for one, was pretty surprised that he wasn't off the board at 5 to Cincinnati, and that he didn't end up falling to the Lions at 7. But then who are the other 2 guys? Is it Levi Uzuorke? Tough names to say for everybody, out of Washington. Is it Akeem McNeil out of North Carolina State? Again, I've referred to the 4th round. I like Derek Barnes, the linebacker. One of those guys, or 2 of those guys, I should say, you're hoping can step up and be a piece of this franchise moving forward. So it's all about gaining that draft capital and putting players in the position to help this franchise for years and years to come. So if you hit on Penei Sewell and you hit on 2 other guys, maybe it's Ramon St. Brown. Maybe it's out of a wide receiver out of USC. If you hit on one of those guys, that can be a huge success for the Lions and Brad Holmes in year 1.
And I know you had a reaction to the emotional reaction once Sewell fell to the Lions. I'm wondering your thoughts on what you saw on draft night when Brad Holmes gave everybody a big bear hug about it, because they got their guy, clearly.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those things, like the how many times do we talk about optics, and how many times do we talk about the looks tell you everything. Picture tells you 1,000 words, video, whatever it may be. I mean, you make no mistake about it. They got their guy. They were so excited, and I think that was emblematic in the way they conducted themselves in that the war room, if you will, and seeing the excitement. I think it speaks volumes for how excited the Lions front office is to have Penei Sewell wearing the blue and silver.
Do you consider him a franchise generation type player?
I do. And the position makes it a little bit tougher because, there's guys that have been in the league forever, Jonathan Ogden and Joe Staley, your offensive linemen that were there forever. And, you can have great offensive linemen on a bad team. So does it make the Lions all of a sudden a front runner for the NFC North? Of course not. But does it give them a guy that's going to be wearing the uniform for 10 years to come and potentially that staple at right tackle? I believe so. Yeah, absolutely. And I also think there's something to be said about drafting. And safe pick might have negative connotation because, we're playing it safe. But in that position where there's so many holes to fill, you're still a year or 2 away to go with what national talking heads, national media members said, all of the top 10. That's your sure Hall of Famer, if you had to make betting odds on who's going to be a Hall of Famer, it's Penei Sewell. So from that sense, I think it's okay with the direction that the Lions went. I don't think it's, again, just going to automatically correlate to wins on the field just because of the position. It's not necessarily as impactful as maybe a franchise quarterback or some of the shiny toys, if you will. But from where the Lions are as an organization, this was the pick they needed to make.
And tell me, Jake, with the draft and free agency now behind them, how do you judge what Holmes and Campbell have done as a tandem so far?
Yeah, I mean, I think the easy reaction, and I'm guilty of this. I talked about it on the air on 97.1 The Ticket, and the bar has been so low for so long. And look at the last regime; they ran this franchise into the ground. So it's human nature. It's a fan's nature to blindly trust something, especially when it's a breath of fresh air. I think we're all vulnerable to that. We're all gullible. Again, I'm just as guilty as you, and just as guilty as the next fan. But that said, it's easy to have all the warm and fuzzies and say everything's going great because there has been this overwhelming feeling of a positive movement. But is that because it was just much worse from years past, or is that because in fact Brad Holmes and company know what they're doing? I hope it's the latter, and that there is a lot to be excited about, but I still want to caution fans to pump the brakes a little bit because there's still, and even in the first year, again, I'll say it time and time again, 2021 is not going to be pretty for the Lions. So let's pump the brakes on any kind of knee-jerk reaction, quick judgment. However, still acknowledging that you got to like the direction Brad Holmes and company are going.
My mom and dad, holy cow, my dad. This is I don't think it's ever really hit me until right now. I'm very grateful today, and I'm very proud to be a Detroit Lion. I'm very excited we got this done. It's a dream come true, and I definitely wasn't stressing over it, right? Because I knew I wasn't. I guess I hate to go back to my dad, but ever since my dad passed, I've kind of just taken everything day by day, and I knew I was under contract for 2 more years, so I kind of just live in the moment, man. But now looking forward to it, yes, it's awesome, man. It's awesome. Decker has become one of my better friends. Jonah, Tyrell, everybody in that room. Penei, get to add Penei to the room. Skipper, everybody, Matt Nelson. It goes on, and just to have that room of guys with Hank, and now bringing in some new coaches and everything. And there's just a lot of excitement about all of that for sure. I don't know, when you sign a contract like this, it's kind of hard to digest that amount of money, right? And I don't know, it just must have hit me today. But I mean, me and my dad and my mom, we've kind of planned this, if that makes sense. This has always kind of been the goal since day one. I was at my mom's house yesterday, and we were going through some of our one of my school projects from middle school. And it was either middle school or elementary school. It's the first time I started writing in cursive, whatever age that was. Hopefully it was elementary school, not middle school, for anybody judging me. But I had wrote that my goal was to make it to the NFL and be able to take care of my parents. And they're just my dad and my mom are just my people, and I'm very grateful for them. And my dad's not here, but I'm very excited to take care of my mom because I had an amazing childhood, man, and I'm just so proud of the way I was raised and how I was raised and my upbringing, and to be able to give back to my mom. I wish I could give back to my dad and go fishing with him and everything, but to be able to give back to my mom and my family means the world. Yeah, there's definitely, I guess you could say, a pressure that comes with it, but I think one thing that has gotten me here today is just my pride, the pride in the name. And that's kind of been there's a lot of outside sources that can put pressure on you, but I don't think it's ever going to be more than the pressure I put on myself. I take so much pride in what I produce with my name, whether it's how I interact with you guys, how I interact with people around the building, or how I play, and I just want to be able to keep climbing. I don't think I have to do anything different, right? I just have to keep on this steady progression. I think there's a lot of improvement I can still make, which is exciting for me and hopefully for Lions fans. But I just have to keep on my steady progression and keep working hard and keep doing what I know works and keep climbing, I was texting some of my dad's buddies. They said they were all crying, and my dad's buddy, Toby Saxon, he said he'd be doing cartwheels. He said he had a pretty mad cartwheel, but he'd probably be calling me a schmo for crying on national media or whatever. But he used to always say this thing. He's like, I'm just gonna keep putting pizzas in the oven, and then one day you'll buy me a helicopter. So I'm sure he'll be saying something like that. But he'd be ecstatic. My mom and my brothers and sisters even would give him crap because he would just he couldn't turn it off. He would talk about me quite a bit. He had Google alerts set, so like if any of you guys wrote anything, he'd be the first to read it, and he'd send me and he'd say, pretty cool sport or pretty cool champ. So he'd be telling everybody anyone who wants to hear.
Company are going.
I think the Lions certainly took a big item off the to-do list by signing Frank right now to the extension. They obviously had an emotional reaction to getting a contract extension. So I'm just wondering your thoughts on what you think that move means for the franchise.
Yeah, listen, I think if you take the combination of extending Ragnow and Decker long term, combined with the direction the organization went with their draft this year in 2021, I go back to my earlier comments. This is all about building a substantial interior line on both the offensive and defensive side of the ball and giving yourself a core base to build around through both lines, offensive and defensive line. And I think that takes it presents a certain personality for a team, and the Lions appear to be heading to that personality. And we talk about it all the time in Detroit. It's a gritty blue collar city. And I think by drafting the amount of big guys you did, the Lions are going big up front, offense and defense, blue collar, gritty. And that's the type of personality this team will have.
And outside of the first pick, you had mentioned that you were a fan of the St. Brown pick. I'm wondering, outside of the first pick, what were you most a fan of what they did in the draft? And was there a specific player that you wish they would have taken that they didn't?
Not necessarily that I wish they would have taken. I do like Ifatu Mel Afantu. I know it's going to be hard to say Afan Wu, the cornerback out of Syracuse. And, I like that because that's another position of need. And I think today's corner is going in that direction, kind of a bigger mold. I mean, he's over 6 foot, over 200 pounds, kind of that Richard Sherman body, if you think of, and to get him in the third round, I think has a lot of value. But, who's to say some of those later round picks, I would be lying to you if I said, I think we should go on this way or that way. The draft gets to be so deep, especially in those later rounds. But again, you talk about positions of needs, you talk about value. I think Derek Barnes, also the linebacker out of Purdue, this team could use some linebackers. Think of Jelani Tavai. I've been on record many times on the ticket, and I'll say it again. I think Jelani Tavai might go down as one of the worst second round picks of all time. So to get hopefully a potential replacement in Derek Barnes in the fourth round, maybe there's some value there. So I like Barnes. I mentioned St. Brown, and then the corner out of Syracuse again. I like that pick in the third round as well, because those are positions of need. And when you're as bad as the Lions, there's a lot of positions of need.
Jake, I think I can run faster than Jelani Tavai, but
I agree.
That's another story for another day.
Yeah, we had some talks before the draft, and I think it's a nice vote of confidence, obviously, for me. And I think what's not lost on me is that their first move as a staff with Brad and Dan involved me. So it's exciting and it makes you feel good. Yeah, I think so. I think there's a lot to take. I think, anytime there's a new head coach and a full new staff and, a lot of the new players as well, there's a turnover and there's a different feeling and there's a different energy in the building and just trying to grasp that and run with it. And I think the biggest thing, I know I mentioned this in my first press conference, was that it can change very quickly. It can go from unfortunately not very good last year to good and to playoff good very quickly. And it's not easy. I'm not saying it's show up and it works, but there's a lot of work that can be done, but it is available. It is an option if we make it the right way and we put the work in and do the right things. I try not to pay much attention to media dialogue or anything like that, but sure, there's some things that build a little chip on your shoulder, and not that I would say I feel like I'm forgotten, but there's some things I've done in this league that I feel pretty good about, and I'm excited to bring to the Lions.
Do you ever want to remind people that you started in a Super Bowl?
I don't need to do that. I'll go out and play this year and hopefully play pretty well and let them make that
For
decision.
another day, I'm also curious to get your thoughts on your first impressions of Jared Goff. He's been here a few weeks, so I'm wondering your initial impressions there as well.
Yeah, no doubt about it. I mean, I personally don't love the chip on the shoulder narrative that you'll hear from time to time. And I think a lot of people in the local media for sure, and extending that out to national media, kind of get that sense when Jared Goff addresses the media. He makes comments that it might be drawing a little bit too far into it, but you sense a little bit of a chip on the shoulder based on how things worked out for the Rams and how he was really shown the door by Jared McVay and the Los Angeles Rams organization. And so for that reason, I think he's got a lot to prove. I don't know if he can ever get back to the first round pick, that caliber quarterback that he was. And, so I almost feel like I'm kind of in between. And I've said this before as well, that it might not make for great radio, great podcast, great video, whatever, multimedia, whatever content it is. I think I'm kind of at a wait and see with Jared Goff. I think there's probably a little bit there's a little bit of merit to both extremes. Could this guy get you back to a Super Bowl eventually? Well, he's proven he can get to a Super Bowl with a running game and an exceptional defense. Or is it a guy that has to have play action and can't complete a pass without it, and is the guy that was shown the doors? And the truth probably lies somewhere in the middle. But I know he's got a lot to prove to both McVay and the Rams as an organization. And is that going to be done in Detroit in the next 2 years? I don't think the next year, but who's to say he couldn't put it together, later on and maybe give the Lions enough to invest in him long-term. But again, I hate to be the guy that's in the middle, but I think it's okay to be honest with where we are in terms of assessing a brand new quarterback. And it's okay to take a wait and see approach.
Are you surprised they didn't take a quarterback in the draft?
Initially, no. And then I said this on the air as well on Sunday. Then a week went by and I just kept getting this uncomfortable feeling, thinking, what if one of those quarterbacks that we passed on turns into, the next franchise altering face of the NFL quarterback, whether that's Justin Fields in Chicago or Mac Jones in Dallas. I think Justin Fields is inheriting an awfully good situation, especially if you consider what's going on in Green Bay, perhaps trouble, and perhaps Aaron Rodgers, nothing proven yet, but he makes it pretty clear that he doesn't want to be playing in Green Bay. So all of a sudden, Aaron Rodgers, again, hypothetically, Aaron Rodgers departs Green Bay, the Lions are rebuilding, and it comes down to the Minnesota Vikings roster and Kirk Cousins against the Chicago Bears roster and Justin Fields. And maybe Justin Fields is the guy that we saw in that semifinal game against Clemson, as opposed to the guy that has struggled at times in other big games, such as in the Big Ten title game against my Northwestern Wildcats, who shut him down on defense. But I think Justin Fields is going to be a star. I really do.
Hey, Jake, my final question for you is, we all know that wins and losses isn't necessarily the ultimate goal of this season. So I'm going to ask you, how do you think fans and the team itself can define success in the 2021 season?
Oh, you saved the toughest question for last, Kevin. I swear. This one. I ask myself this question and I go back and forth on it. It depends on the week. The competitor in me wants to see them be in every game and have the chance to win every game. But the realist in me just knows that's not going to be the case. So you have to find different ways to evaluate whether or not this franchise is moving forward and whether or not Brad Holmes is looking like a successful GM in his first year. Dan Campbell, his first year as head coach. And I think it's difficult to express in words and articulate, because it's one of those things, you know it when you see it, in terms of the body language on the field, the competitive nature that this organization has, because we've seen it. We've seen the bottom fall out with the Lions, where it's just ugly and they have no business being on the field. I don't think you ever want to see that, where they're not competing and you know, you're counting down the seconds for games to be over with. But at the same time, if this is another, you know, 4 or 5 win season, and you stock up that draft capital and you're picking in the top 5 again, and and you have the opportunity to continue to build through the draft, that's not all bad either. So one of those things, you know it when you see it. I think you want to see a competitive team that's fighting, starting to build that personality after their head coach and Dan Campbell, that they're biting kneecaps off and playing tough in the trenches, playing gritty with those 3 draft picks in the first 3 rounds of interior linemen, and going from there and seeing where it leads.
Hey, Jake, I know that you've had a busy day, and I know that the podcast you host, the Michigan State of Sports, is going well. So I really want to thank you for spending a few minutes with me and making time in your schedule to answer a couple of questions. Most appreciated. Always great to see you, and let's do this again soon, okay?
Kevin, absolutely. You know, anytime I can, it's an honor to be on your show. It's always great to catch up with you. I love every part of it. I love every second of it. This is a lot of fun. We'll definitely do it again, my friend.